Welcome everybody to the Sunday morning Joe and Joe Weather Show. Joe Chaffee here, Joe Rayo there. How are you on this Sunday?
I'm doing just fine, Joe. It's
Uh,
nice to be back. It's been a few days, hasn't it?
well, we took Friday and Saturday off as we normally like to do, unless there's weather going on.
And
But
guess what? And guess what? When all of last week, I mean, we had our eyes on Epsilon and saying what happened to the storm that was supposed to be in the Gulf and coming up the eastern
uh,
seaboard. Things have changed, and now all of a sudden we come back on Sunday morning, and guess what? The storm in the Gulf of Mexico is there, and it's Zeta.
and it Epsilon made such a big change in the whole profile across the Atlantic, especially the Western Atlantic, down into the Northwest Gulf. That while it was crawling to before it made its pass east of Bermuda, it took about 3 days for it to make the turn there. While it was there, there was no way for anything to really get going in the Northwest Caribbean. But the minute it pulled out, the ridge along the East Coast broke down. A little ridge built across the Southern Atlantic back into Florida and into the Eastern Gulf, and you suddenly had the right conditions. You could see how quickly the system developed from just a mass of clouds that the pressures just dropped very, very quickly down there. So we went from almost nothing, just disorganized cloud cover and showers, to a tropical depression and a tropical storm in about 48 hours time. So uh, Epsilon was a big deal from the standpoint of the overall weather picture. And now it's moving away. And now it looks like we're going to see some things happening later this week, depending on Zeta and all that. My contention on that, Joe, is that all that tropical moisture down there has got to go someplace. And you've got this southern plain system that's producing a winter storm now in the central Rockies and in the central plains. That low is going to come out. You're going to see the tropical moisture surge up the eastern seaboard ahead of it. I think no matter what the outcome is, with specifically regarding to Zeta itself.
Yeah, and you were right, Joe, in terms of the development of Zeta, because even though we had Epsilon out there, I think during one of our shows last week, you pointed out that we still have that gyre, if you will, down across the tropical Gulf of Mexico, and that you were, wondering what would become of that. Well, now we know it has indeed become yet another tropical cyclone, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see the interaction between Zeta as it comes north and eastward, and that system coming in from the west, whether or not they kind of coalesce or whether or not that system from the west kind of pushes Zeta along into our area. But it does seem to me that the chances for a very significant, possibly excessive rain event may be on the cards for us for later on in the week. And interestingly, the Climate Prediction Center about a week or so ago had much of the Northeast and Mid Atlantic in the zone for possible excessive rains. And then they said the probability was reasonably good for that. But then they took it away because I guess the models were not suggesting much of anything out of the Gulf. And
Right.
now all of a sudden, of course, now that the system is there, it's looking more and more like, yeah, we may very well indeed see a rather significant rain event as we finish out this upcoming week.
Joe Rayo is going to be monitoring the chat board as he always does, so be sure to post your questions or comments there, and we will get to them throughout the show. And in the meantime, we want to share with you the fact that the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider. And Joe, you know, with winter coming, that if your winter equipment is not working right, you have Mrs. Rayo, who puts Josephine the plumber to shame to fix it all up. Well, some people don't have a person that is handy with stuff, so you might need new shovels and new salting equipment, or maybe you're a snowplow guy and you need to get new supplies. Well, Omni True Value Hardware, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. No matter what size your fleet, rock salt, straight bag salt, geomelt, biomelt, and a whole lot more. So be sure to head toward Omni True Value Hardware, 631-756-1125, or go to the website omnitruevalue.com. So, speaking of winter storms, why don't we do that first? We'll go to the
Wait a
winter.
minute. Wait a minute. You brought up Josephine the plumber, and I know that there's a fair percentage of people on this chat board or viewing right now who have no clue who you're referring to. But Josephine the plumber used to do the commercials for what cleanser?
Comet
Comet.
will
And
make
who
your
played?
mouth turn green. Comet
No, no, no,
tastes
no.
like gasoline.
Now you mentioned Josephine the plumber. Who was the actress who played Josephine the plumber?
Oh God, I know this too.
I'll give you her initial.
I know this.
JW.
Oh, Jane Withers.
Jane Withers. There you
I thank you. I appreciate that. I needed a little bit of help
Yes.
on that, but I'm trying to find a shot of Josephine the plumber, and I do.
For those of you who are uninitiated, back in the 1960s, and my God, now all of a sudden Joe and I are dating ourselves. But back in the 1960s, Comet Cleanser, the spokesperson for Comet Cleanser, much is the same way for that woman who does Progressive Insurance. She's a
Oh,
spokesperson.
Flo, right.
Flo. Jane Withers played Josephine the plumber. She always came to your house. And you know what, Joe? She was a plumber, but she never did anything with the pipes or
No, but she never
the
had
water.
to because you know what? Comet, always did the trick
The only
somehow.
No, but the only thing that she ever did was to get tea stains out of the sink.
Yeah,
She did that
well,
using Comet.
after all, Joe, it was the 50s and 60s. Here's what she looks like. So you older folk in the audience will remember Jane Withers, the lovely and well-known Jane Withers. That she was the spokesman for that product for like 20 years. I mean,
That's
it
right.
was
That's
forever.
right.
So yeah, so now we've gotten that. So now at least everybody's on the same page. If you come away from this show on a daily basis with one thing, one thing, you will leave with knowing an actor or actress that you have never known or heard of or seen before, and you'll suddenly understand what you have missed, the greatness of some of these people. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you saw my Facebook post, but the Birds was on, so I had to do a tribute to Mrs. Bundy.
Oh yes, I
You
saw
know,
that. I saw that.
so if you've seen the Birds, I'm not gonna. I got Mrs. Bundy the picture here somewhere, but if you've seen the Birds, you know who I'm talking about. Okay,
Right.
let's move on. We've got weather to talk about, and of course, we're going to do the winter storm out in the Rockies and Plains because this system actually is going to be key to what's going to happen later in the week in the eastern part of the United States. And of course, most folks on here, if I had to take a poll, probably like to hear more about snow, with hurricanes a close second. So, tropical storms a close second. So, we'll do this first. Winter storm warnings, almost all of Colorado, except for the easternmost counties, western half of Nebraska, southern South Dakota, southeastern Wyoming, and northern New Mexico. And you've got winter weather advisories, Joe, going down into North Texas, most of Kansas, the rest of Nebraska, western Iowa. So this is a pretty rather large system. Also have winter storm watches up for areas in New Mexico outside of the winter storm warnings. So they may have additional winter storm warnings added to this later today, depending on how this whole thing plays out. And the snowfall forecast over this is the map up through 2 a.m. Wednesday. So much of this is already done, by, pretty much done by then. But big amounts for Colorado. This is actually, Joe, good news maybe for northern Colorado, where the big fires that have been going on. Temperatures are down in the low single digits this morning up there, and they also have snow falling. So I mean, that's got to help to put some of the fire out. But this ain't too shabby. Again, let's forget the September snowstorm because that was an anomaly. But for a mostly first time snow event for this rather large area, not too shabby for the 25th of October.
And yeah, and I'm just thinking, Joe, looking on the calendar here, we've often pointed out the fact that the snowstorm, the early season snowstorm, the pre-Halloween snowstorm of 2011, and Sandy both fell on the same calendar date, and now we have Zeta, and it looks like Zeta is going to try to pretty much uh, fall close to that same time frame. And
Right.
I'm wondering whether or not there's something all of a sudden about late October and the propensity for attracting significant storms.
Well, look, if you think about it, October for the most part is a quiet month, particularly the first half. But there is that, I always like to call it the switch flip that goes on in the atmosphere, where you get out of the late summer, early autumn mode, which is for the most part a quiet time outside of tropical systems, to the much more active late autumn, early winter type mode, where you start to get the storms coming down or moving in from the west, or developing in the Gulf of Mexico non-tropical wise. These all these battle zones that get set up in the early part of the winter. Probably to an extent, to me, it reminds me of March when you're warming so
Yeah,
rapidly. You're warming up rapidly. In this case, you're cooling rapidly with leftover warm air. So in November and March, to me, so maybe that's where we are in terms of the atmosphere. Maybe that's why the end of October is sort of the megaphone announcement that says, "Attention, ladies and gentlemen, you're about to enter the next season. Fasten your seatbelts and consult the no smoking signs," which is a good reason to get rid of the wildfires, of course. So anyway, there's your snow. And so far, by the way, these are 48-hour snow amounts up around Billings, for example, which got 6. Helena, I always forget this. Is it Helena or Helene? I think it's Helena.
I think it's Helena.
Helena, a foot of snow there. Spokane is got 6 inches out of this, and actually, you don't have to go too far to the east of Seattle to pick up some significant snows. Western Wyoming seeing some significant snows out of this, and now, of course, this is starting to push down. Had Fort Collins picked up 3 inches as of 7 a.m. this morning. Boulder picked up an inch. So winter storm warnings throughout much of the area down in Colorado. Figure 6 to 12 in most places would be a good bet, with higher amounts, of course, when you get up beyond the hills and go up to the highest elevations. That's a no-brainer. And we got our fingers crossed that it does something with regards to the wildfire situation. So here's the satellite loop, and uh, it's kind of gloom and doom, Joe, for everybody from the Rockies east, because if you except for some small slivers of dry air and clearer skies, like in upstate New York and northern New England, we're clouding over here. There's some rain just to our south, a little. What should have been a really nice day. The front slowed down, stalled out. You've got this little low slash inverted trough that's developed near the coast, and uh, we've got another day here with hardly any sunshine.
Yeah, it was supposed to be 2 days ago. I saw a mini forecast that were saying, oh, the better of the two weekend days is Sunday. It'll be chillier, but at least it'll be bright and sunny. Yeah, I stepped outside a little while ago and I did see the sun, Joe. It looked like I was looking at the sun through a jar of mayonnaise. That's the
Yeah,
kind of sky I have right now
I
here.
actually, I mean, there's just like a little bit of brightening still left. Maybe about an hour ago, there were some rips of sun in there, but you can see where we've pretty much clouded over, and those clouds go all the way down off the Florida coast through the Bahamas, and then on the southern end of this picture, you see Tropical Storm Zeta in the Northwest Caribbean. Really hasn't moved very much, and I'm kind of waiting for all the advisory stuff, which is just about done, and then we'll switch over to that. Meanwhile, we have a lot of clouds and back through the Ohio and Tennessee Valley, down through the central and western Gulf, and also back up through the northern plains. You see the higher cloud tops there. That is some of that is snow. The band that's up to the north and west, that's running through southern Wyoming and northeastern Utah, and headed up north and east of there. There's some snow coming out of that. So the question for the later in the week is this energy back through here. is going to wind up picking this up somehow. Forget where the storm center goes. We'll resolve that later. It's the moisture that I think is going to make a big push up into the southeast and lower Ohio, Tennessee Valley, and then up through the southeast and mid-Atlantic, and maybe, just maybe, we could get this. I really would like to see this go as far north as possible because the drought conditions in New England, in spite of some rain recently, are still pretty severe. And this would be something that could knock it out, or at least make such a big dent into it that we're not talking severe drought anymore.
Correct. I agree with you. And on the chat board, William Huber writes that he's going back to work to hook up a 138 kilovolt cable to electricity grid. This job is, he says, 100% infected by the weather.
Yeah.
And when good luck. Be careful with 138 kilovolt. That could be a pretty shocking experience, I would presume.
Yeah, I would imagine so. It can't. Yeah, no, we don't want to do that. All right, so switching over just to the Canadian satellite, uh, there's Epsilon on the Canadian satellite. Let me update. Well, that's up to about 1300 hours today, 13Z, so 10 o'clock. So it's only about an hour or so behind. Still kind of has a bit of a core to it, but although it has shrunk away a bit. So if I'll find out in a moment because I haven't looked at any of the new stuff, so maybe they made it extra tropical. Doesn't really matter. It's racing out. It is going to be extra tropical, if not now, 6 hours or 12 hours from now, becoming a big Atlantic storm. And by the way, you can see the swirl that's up in the waters between Greenland and Labrador. There's a spinning system there that's taking Epsilon, and probably those two are going to merge into one big cyclone out there in the North Atlantic. And again, it pulling out really changed the profile here, Joe, because now we've got this, much more troughing in the eastern part of the United States to move these weather systems along. And that's something we were lacking last week. The problem is that it's not enough of a push to move those. It's not enough to just move those weather systems along, but the jet is not far enough south. So we're going to have this frontal boundary sitting all week. And I'm wondering just exactly how much sun are we going to see between now and Thursday, because after that we know it's probably going to rain. I don't know. It could be a gloom and doom week here from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England.
We did mention, or we have been alluding to the fact that, Monday and Tuesday was not going to be very bright. The Thursday now, and then maybe into Friday because of Zeta, possibly some wet weather. We said maybe Wednesday we might get a break and get a decent sunny day. Now it doesn't even look like that may happen. It looks like what we're dealing with, as you just mentioned, John. I mean, like if you were depressed by what we went through last week with the clouds and the mist and the fog and the drizzle, and then you just sat there and waited for a few pokes of afternoon sun, and which is basically what we did all of this past week. If you were depressed by that, get ready for more depression. It looks like for this upcoming week because it doesn't really look all that great.
All right, radar wise, right now, we do have some rain for trying to come up for later today. You could see some patches from southern New Jersey down into Delaware, Maryland, Northeast Virginia. It has actually weakened somewhat from what it was from the overnight hours. Also, a couple of showers crossing into parts of south central Pennsylvania, west of Harrisburg, down into northern West Virginia. A little bit of heavier rain in eastern North Carolina. Further south down in Florida, seeing some scattered showers, some of that moisture that runs off the Florida coast and extends southward into the Northwest Caribbean. This is not really directly related into with the Tropical Storm Zeta, but it's kind of in the envelope that exists there. And here's some snow from you always, when I look at the radars out here, sometimes you think nothing's going on because the radars don't always look impressive, but they because of elevation issues in the mountains, oftentimes you don't really see what's happening in terms of what's actually coming down. But the radar does show snows from Utah, northern Utah, northeastern Utah, across northern Colorado, on up into western Nebraska, and you can see it extends all the way up into parts of Minnesota. So it is pretty extensive east-west band here of snow.
And incidentally, the Hurricane Center has come out with their 11 a.m. outlook already for both Zeta and also for Epsilon. And in terms of what Epsilon, it talks about Zeta, I should say, it's talking about the fact that the storm should be at or near hurricane strength when it approaches the Yucatan, given the favorable upper level outflow, plus the high, very high, they say, oceanic heat content over the northwestern Caribbean. So they're talking about intensifying to a hurricane for Zeta. And then, although not explicitly shown in the official forecast, the unfavorable atmospheric and oceanic conditions over the northern Gulf of Mexico should cause Zeta to weaken by the time the center reaches the northern Gulf Coast. And now, here comes the disclaimer. However, users are reminded that our intensity forecasts are subject to some uncertainty. No
Yes.
kidding.
And I while you were speaking, I put up the Hurricane Center's 11 o'clock um, advisory and the Hurricane Center's forecast, keeping it a tropical storm going into the northeastern Yucatan, but it kind of just skims the coast, and then they have it as a hurricane on the other side. So, tropical storm warnings up in blue for the northeast Yucatan and western Cuba. Then, of course, the turn northward toward the Gulf Coast. And will this set a record, Joe? This might set a record for landfalls in Louisiana in one season, because I think this would be the fifth hurricane to make landfall this season for them, and I believe the old record is four.
Crazy, just absolutely crazy. But of course, if you're going to set a record like that, you need lots of tropical activity. And this one now ties 2005.
You
So
know what?
now,
Hold on. I have to stop you because I thought the same thing, but actually we're one shy because they added an unnamed subtropical storm in the mix, so we need one more to tie.
really,
Yes, I'll
really,
show you. I knew this was going to come up, but so I got the track map for 2005, which if you kind of you look at this, and this was another year where we had you know a developing or strengthening La Nina. A lot of action in the Gulf of Mexico, and notice, Joe, a lot of landfalls here. Most of these were majors. A lot of landfalls here well, right on the Louisiana Texas line. I think that was probably Rita. You had another hurricane that went into eastern Louisiana, a tropical storm and minimal hurricane that kind of swung around here earlier in the early part of the season through the central Gulf. Uh, I mean, there was another one that came into the western part of the Florida Panhandle. So there's a lot of similarities uh, to what's happened this season. Also, the Southwest Gulf, if you think about it, we had Hannah and a couple of others down there. Maybe the one primary difference, well, in this instance, you had a couple of storms that rolled up the east coast offshore, whereas we had them, we had Faye and we also had Isaias, which had impact here, as we know, with the wind. But yeah, if you look at the total storm, right here, the number 19, October 4th and 5th, a 45-mile-an-hour subtropical storm, double S, with no name attached to it. So this must have been done in post analysis.
yeah.
So Zeta is number 28 here because of that added storm. And that, by the way, didn't happen until December 30th and carried over into the next year, 2006, January 6, 2006. So Zeta actually was 2 months later than, more than 2 months, just about 2 months later than what Zeta today. But we're only at 27 storms now, so we're going to need one more. And you know what? We're probably going to get it. I think we still may wind up getting if we go back to 2005, just to look at the calendar on 2005. So uh, Wilma, just count the October storm. So you had Vince, Wilma, Alpha, Beta. All right. Then you had three in November. You had Gamma, Delta, Epsilon. We've already, that's old news now. And then you had a month break, uh, I'm sorry, 3 week break to the end of the December when you put the last one on the table, which was Zeta. So I think we could certainly get at least another two named storms between now and the end of the year.
I agree with you. There's absolutely no, and they just said in this in this discussion for Zeta, they said that the Caribbean has very high latent heat, very high surplus of heat down there. So, what would stop another tropical system from forming down in the Caribbean in the days or weeks to come? I mean, it's almost a certainty that that's going to happen. So, all right, so we have to go one more to tie. That's
Right.
no big deal. And considering that they had in 2005 they had to go all the way to the end of the year to get to Zeta, and here we are in late October and we're already at Zeta. So we're running way ahead of schedule anyway.
On the satellite loop, by the way, the storm has a bit of a tilt to it. There's not a whole lot going on north of the center. Most of it is along and south of where the center is. So there's probably some mid-level shear going on that's tilting the low-level center versus the mid-level center. But when you look at the upper atmosphere, this entire area has got a large anticyclone or high over it at the very top of the atmosphere at 200 millibars, which is what you like to see when you're looking for hints of whether a storm is going to strengthen or not. It's not the only thing you want to look at, but it certainly is a very important feature. And the general environment in the Northwest Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico is a light wind shear environment, which should be favorable for strengthening. And with respect to the models, I did bring up the hurricane tracking models, and they were all, except for two of them that are the far left outliers, the rest of them are all clustered between southeast Louisiana and the western part of the Florida panhandle, somewhere in there, sometime probably on Wednesday, later Wednesday, for a landfall. Got to get it out of the Caribbean first. And Joe, the strength, the intensity models, I actually was kind of surprised at how bullish they are, because you do have a few of them that take it at least up to a Category 1 hurricane before making landfall. As it approaches land, again, you got to deal with that cooler water now that's over in the northern Gulf of Mexico. So unless something is racing like a rocket ship, it is likely to weaken. Whereas a month ago, it probably would have at least held its own or maybe even strengthened a bit. But the intensity guidance is fairly bullish here. So I think we're going to see. To me, I still think the bigger deal is all the moisture coming up and how much rain.
Now, if you go back to the spaghetti plot, the consensus plot of the track of Zeta,
Uh huh.
it's interesting to me because all of them, save for one, I think, show that the storm is expected, if you follow this at face value, is supposed to pass to the south of the tri-state area. And yet, if you look at the National Hurricane Center's latest track for Zeta and just simply do some extrapolation, you would get the idea that no, the storm is going to go off well to the west of us.
Wait.
So
Let me take a look. Hold on. Let me bring a map up. Yeah. Yeah.
again, just doing some simple extrapolation
I
from
mean, if you
Wednesday.
drew a straight line, yeah, it would go
Yeah,
up, from where it is on the Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee state line. The next stop on a straight line probably would be to Pittsburgh and beyond. But I think because of what's happening in the upper atmosphere, which will show, there's some logic to the idea that will get deflected more to the east. And there's also, remember, as as we bring this northward, if we've got some upper air trough that's going to start getting involved, this thing will obviously not be tropical anymore, but will start to look like a winter storm, which would enhance the idea of a sizable rainfall. And in fact, on that note, we do have WPC's 7-day forecast here somewhere. There it is. They went really bullish here, Joe. Look at how much rain they're generating. 3+ inch rains from central New Jersey southward, 2 inch plus rains to about New York City, touching the south shore of Connecticut and back across Pennsylvania, and lesser amounts as you go through upstate New York and New England. But that's a pretty good chunk of water being indicated back through West Virginia, Kentucky, all the way back into Oklahoma. So this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out with respect to this, because I think the rain is the bigger deal.
it would be nice to see some of that red on the WPC QPF work its way indeed up into places like Rhode Island and parts of New England, which, as you mentioned earlier, are still under a severe drought. But the beggars can't be choosers. We'll take anything, and I'm sure they'll take anything as well. But look at that broad swath very heavy rain that passes. Well, we're right on the northern periphery here in the tri-state area, New York, northern New Jersey, Long Island, and points south into the north, into the Hudson Valley. It drops off a little bit to lighter values, if you can call 1.25 to 1.5 inches light.
Right. All right, let's look at the upper air and figure out what's happening with regards to the tropical storm and then everything else and how they all sort of interact. So remember, we went from a situation with epsilon off the East Coast, and I will roll the upper air back a couple of frames so you can see it here. This is going back to Thursday when we were pretty much locked and loaded with this ridge here in the east that was cradling it. It was crawling northward. Uh, the, uh, the formation of epsilon actually caused this upper high to develop even stronger, forcing the jet stream in the United States much further to the northwest. And then, meanwhile, you're kind of left in sort of a no-flow, no man's land down here in the Caribbean and into the southeastern and south central Gulf of Mexico. But of course, with epsilon pulling out, things started to change. The ridge in the east broke down. You suddenly started to see the westerlies across the southern Gulf of Mexico pushing southward. And now, as we make our way into where we are today, we are in a much different place. Your upper high is out in the Atlantic and goes into the islands. You got another upper high that comes out of Mexico, and meanwhile, right in the middle, there's your westerly flow, the southern edge of the westerlies across the lower Gulf. But right in the middle, right in here, this is where you have uh, uh, our tropical storm Zeta, and it's going to respond to this weakness in between the two ridges and gradually make its way probably toward and through the Yucatan Channel, or close, or maybe even going over the eastern part of the Yucatan Peninsula and then into the Gulf of Mexico. And as we go forward, Joe, you got this deep trough that's out in the west that starts to come into play along about Tuesday. So it should respond to that and start going northwest and then eventually northward. Is it going to be Louisiana again, or is it going to be further to the east? I think that's going to depend on how fast it comes out of the Caribbean. And right now, it doesn't seem like it's in any rush to do that.
You know, Joe, I'm just getting a little annoyed about one thought that just came into my head, and that is that before Congress made that brilliant decision to extend daylight saving time 1 week into the first weekend of November,
Right.
and that will be next weekend. Next weekend at 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, we'll go back to standard time. But this would have been the weekend that we would have gone back to standard time, which means that
We'd
we
have the
would
new
have had
GFS. The start of the new GFS would be halfway done.
exactly, and we would have had a better idea as to what will happen for later in the week with the latest and newest data. But thank you very much, Washington, for once again making a wonderful decision to
Well, they don't
stretch that
consult.
daylight
See,
saving
this
time.
is the thing, Joe. What they need to understand going forward is they have to consult you and I before they make these sorts of decisions.
Exactly.
Because we because. Okay. Anyhow, here's your upper flow for starting from Tuesday, and of course you've got this upper high off the Florida coast, but it's a different setup than what we had last week. You've got a west-southwest flow moving up through the eastern and the northeastern mid-Atlantic states. Shortwave trough, the northern part of the jet, very intense system here, drops down into southern New Mexico, which explains why you're seeing winter storm warnings up as far south as you are. And it's that system that's going to eventually pick this up because that upper high that's off the east coast is going to weaken. Now, going forward, as these short waves move along, of course, we're going to be dealing with a stalled frontal boundary here until this weather system in the south kicks off to the northeast. Now, at this point, as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, what would be Zeta, at least according to the last run of the GFS, is inland somewhere, probably
Right.
somewhere there in southern Alabama or southern Mississippi. But here you got this upper low coming, and now you've got this also pretty active northern stream shortwave trough that's dropping into the Dakotas that I think is just going to try to semi-phase with that system coming out of the south. and it lifts the whole thing bodily up northeast and eastward, shifting it eastward as we move toward the end of the week. So this is why we're thinking that that tropical moisture has got to get up here.
It does. And also another thing, it's so chilly out there today. We've really, flipped over the last 24 hours in terms of local temperature. And when we do that, some people might say, "Oh my goodness, now how long are we going to have to deal with this unseasonably chill?" Well, actually, looking at that upper air, Joe, with the southwesterly flow, it's looked like it's not going to stay very chilly for very long. It looks like we'll go back to near or even above normal temperatures, albeit wet, but back to warmer temperatures in a matter of the next day or two.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be tough with cloud cover. I'm wondering whether an onshore flow. So I want to be a little cautious here because as far as that goes with temperatures, because I don't think the setup is the same as last week, where those areas that broke out into sun saw temperatures up well into the 70s to near 80. Now I'm talking down in Northeast Virginia, Maryland, and Southern Delaware, pushed the high end of that. But everybody else kind of, and even into Southern New Jersey, it pushed up into the middle and upper 70s on a couple of days. I don't know about areas up further north. That might be a little tougher if there's cloud cover, and there are a couple of ripples here that the models pick up in terms of rain. There's whatever happens today, late today and tonight is pretty weak, and then that gets out of here. I don't think there's going to be too much happening tomorrow. Monday night into early Tuesday, there was a little ripple. The model sort of backed off on that. It's got a little bit of schmutz Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and then here comes the big player for Thursday into Thursday night. Now, I got a question for you.
Yes.
So you looked at the model guidance out from the overnight runs, and it's done this a couple of times. It's trying to show two separate lows here, and the reason it's doing that is because what you're seeing for Thursday into Thursday night into early Friday is the whatever remnant low that's identified with Zeta. But then they still have, Joe, the upper low that's coming out of the southwest that heads northeastward, and that has a surface low there in southern Indiana, which it takes into western Pennsylvania and then eventually into upstate New York. And you see it actually even starts to break out some snow in upstate New York on Friday, and in northern New England that gradually finds its way southward in New England for later Friday into Friday night. I looked at that and I thought, yeah, I kind of understand where how it gets there, but that doesn't happen a lot of the times. Oftentimes we see models try and do this, and then because of timing differences, as we get closer to the event, it winds up being just one low that comes out rather than two distinct features. So I don't know where you are on that. Are you thinking one? Are you thinking two?
No, I said at the onset about how, indeed, how there are two separate entities, that system out in the Midwest, and of course the remnants of Zeta. And I personally, 5 days out, I'm with you in the sense that I think the models will work it out and figure out either are they going to coalesce into one system, or indeed do they stay separate? I think it's foolish to try to determine that now.
Yeah.
That because if you assume that they're two separate systems, then the schedule suggests that it may be Thursday, Friday, and then Friday, Saturday. But if they kind of coalesce into one big blob, so to speak, then we have to deal with maybe one major system moving on by through the northeastern United States.
See now
We'll
the
have to
the
wait and see.
the European argues. I mean, look at the European, which takes it into central Louisiana by Wednesday evening. It seems to imply it's more of one system. That the whole Southwest thing gets ejected out at around the same time, it picks Zeta up, and it's more like one system here, with a low there at Atlantic City, and actually not a half bad looking gradient up from Atlantic City northward, with a high that sort of envelopes around it from the Western Lakes. But it looks like it's more of one low on the European, because by Friday night everything is long gone. Whereas the GFS is still trying to, still has that with that second low.
Yeah, that surface map almost looks like it's trying to stretch it out into a cigar.
Yes. See
In
on
a
the
sense.
yeah, so you do have some model differences here with regards to the outcome of this, and as I said, I tend to sort of like the notion that you could wind up with just one low coming out of all of this rather than two. That seems to make, to me, that seems to make more sense, that it'll be just like more like one amorphous low with a lot of rain with it. And speaking of rainfall, if I'll just bring up the OGFS uh, rainfall forecast map, and we'll take it out. This will be a 7-day rainfall. So it's actually gotten a little less bullish with the amounts. I shifted it a little bit further to the south from prior runs. There was one run yesterday that looked kind of like what WPC did. Very bullish with rainfall. But make no mistake, this is a very wet looking 7-day outlook here with up to a couple of inches of rain in some places. And also, again, that moisture going all the way back into the southern plains. So, again, you and I are sort of on the idea that the further north it goes, the better. And we'll put up the really fast, before I come back full screen, the snow forecast from the GFS over the next 7 days. And because it's got split lows, it's showing snows up in upstate New York and up into Maine. So if you don't have split lows, I think you're going to have a tough time getting this to be reality. But we know that what's going on in the Rockies and Plains, because much of what you're seeing here is front end loaded with what's going on. And there are some pretty bullish snow amounts, particularly up in northeastern New Mexico and northwest Texas, that the GFS spits out. So it's going to be a very interesting week overall with what's going on. I think we're going to have I think we're going to have what I would refer to as a forecast challenge on our hands.
Yes, indeed. And it's kind of weird that, you look at the calendar and it's late October. The way these maps, especially the snow fall maps look, you'd almost expect that this would be December, or as you said at the very onset of the show, more like something in early March. It is kind of strange out there.
Okay, so let's get some Briller Jeopardy done.
I've got questions that I should
You
have
know
given
what?
you.
You have the questions?
Yes, I do.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. And
He's
Scott
got the questions, everybody. Isn't that
and Scott
exciting?
Scott, thanks a lot for that little comment. He says these were questions I was supposed to give you back on Thursday. And
Ah,
Scott leads off by saying, Joe, ask Renata for assistance.
yeah.
I'll
Shaggy
get you.
Shaggy Stern
Yes,
hit super chat. We want to acknowledge that. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Shraggy
Shaggy.
Stern. He
Shaggy.
wanted to. Thank you. So Joe and I appreciate it greatly
We worked
on
with
this
we
Sunday.
worked with somebody named Stern many, many years ago.
Oh, Roger Stern. Is he still
Roger
using?
Stern.
Is he still using a typewriter? Roger, if you really, if you watch this show, which obviously you do, but if you don't, just in case, I'm sure someone in your circle, your social circle, will tell you that you're being spoken about. I'm just still wondering whether you're still using a manual typewriter.
Well, he's over at 1010 wins now.
Oh, is
And of
he?
course 1010 wins uses in the background as they're reading the news, they're using the ticker, the old news ticker. So Roger would fit
No,
right in there.
Roger's actually doing the sound effect. These guys, he's reading the news and holding the typewriter and going at the same time. I actually can visualize him doing that.
I could visualize him too doing that too. So here are the questions, Joe.
Okay.
All right, this is all related to Central Park. So if you're on your Central Park statistics, and I know you are, you'll be able to get every one of these, maybe.
All right. That's if I can still remember them. But
Question number one is what on average is the cloudiest day of the year at Central Park? And he'll give you credit for within
I'm
45
sorry.
days.
What is what day? The cloudiest day?
The cloudiest day of the year
Oh,
in Central
this
Park.
is a Sal Blandino question. I mean, he's he's got it broken down by 5 minute increments. In the cloudiest day?
Climatologically speaking. Now, I'd like to know, Scott, if you're listening, I'd like to know where you got this information
All
from
right,
because
I'm going to say, yeah, that is a curious, a curious stat.
I mean, you
I'm,
just can't go to the almanac that they have on the Upton website. I mean, they'll give you some high, record low, and record rainfall. But where do you get the information as to where the cloudiest day of the year is at Central Park? But anyway, he'll give you
yeah,
credit within 45 days.
I'm trying to kind of logically look at this, and if I would think if I would think it would be, well, there was a couple of arguments I could make here. I could say that it's a day in, say, late March or April because of the spring and the marine layer, and we know what a pain in the neck that is. But I could also make a case for maybe it's sometime in late November or early December.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And of course, the answer will probably be exactly between those two, so which I wouldn't even get anywhere close. All right, I'll say, I don't know. I'll say, I'll give you two dates that I'm going to put on the board: April 7th and December 6th.
Wonderful. Well, actually, the cloudiest day is in between those two
I
dates.
told you.
Yeah.
What did I
January
just say?
January 3rd, and he says it's cloudy 54%. I guess he just says it is cloudy 54%. So I guess he means in terms of frequency, 54% of the time.
You know, when
54% cloud cover. But
not lying, totally truthful. I was actually also thinking in my mind like late December, early January. But then I
right.
said, you know what? Let me take that out. Let's just go with the spring, late fall, early spring angle. But I wasn't too far off with the December 6th. I only missed it
Right.
by less than a
Well, he said he
month.
gave you a 45-day leeway either way.
He gave
So
me how many day leeway?
he got credit within 45 days.
Oh, okay. So that's it. So the December
Ding,
6th one works.
ding, ding, ding. I
Okay.
guess all of these questions, well, he only says that for question one. Question two is what day of the year has snow fallen more than any other day in Central Park?
I'll say uh, I'll say February 3rd.
Not bad. January 27th.
My birthday.
Your
My
birthday.
birth. I should have picked my birthday.
There you go.
There you go. That was
Question
also
three is
that was also a subtle way of reminding everybody that my birthday is ahead of
January
us.
27th.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
You know me. I'm a shameless self-promoter. Uh, go on
You make a
next.
big deal about that. Question three, what day in Central Park is the windiest? And this one is, again, within 45 days for credit.
The windiest.
The windiest day of the year
All right.
based on long-term
I'll
records.
I'll, I'll say March 15th.
Not bad. You got within 2 weeks, February 26th.
Okay.
And the final question, question four, drum roll, please. What is Central Park's coldest day of the year within 10? Now, this is not the record. We know the record is February 9th, 1934.
Right.
But what he wants is, I guess, the coldest day, constant coldest day based on long-term records within 10 days for credit, the coldest day of the year.
I will say, well, you know what? Let's go. I'll say January 29th.
What? You got it.
Really?
Really.
Wow.
January 29th.
Oh, God, that was a lucky guess on my part. That was such a random guess on my part. Well, it wasn't quite random because I figured it's got to be inside that climatological,
Right.
coldest period. Uh,
Right.
and I figured since my birthday is actually a multi-day celebration, we could extend that by 2 days. I'm surprised I hit that on the nose. All right, I know you got a couple of more minutes, or do you have to go?
I think there was a phone call, and I think I want to find out what that phone call was that came in the middle. So that
All right, I'll
plus
tell you
other
what.
things.
Let me read you the question, and then you think about this, and we'll go over this tomorrow. Okay?
Okay.
So, city's biggest snowstorms. Okay, and they might be multi-day events. So, but in terms of total snow from a given snowstorm, so I'll give you five of the cities
Okay.
for now. Atlanta,
Right.
Seattle, Denver, Mount Washington, and Flagstaff. There's five other cities, but I'll leave you with those five. And
Mount Washington's a city, Joe.
well, that's what he has on here. Let's go
Location. Right.
locations:
All right.
Atlanta, Seattle, Denver, Mount Washington, Flagstaff.
Okay.
Those are the five. Okay,
All
those are the
right.
first five, and then we can finish this off tomorrow. Okay.
Okay. Very
Does
good.
that work? All right. So, folks, let me just remind everybody really quick that for my those of you that are on my weather platform on Patreon, which you can join by going to patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. There will be a live Zoom. I we were I was I'm still trying to figure out whether it's going to be tonight or it's going to be on Monday. So just for members, just make sure you check your post this afternoon because I'm probably going to make that decision in a couple of hours. So if it's not tonight, it will be tomorrow night after the Joe and Joe Weather Show is done. And also remind everybody that the Joe and Joe Show on weekdays now starts at 7:30 p.m. rather than 7 o'clock due to having to circumvent technical issues with regards to the internet around here, which for some reason likes to crash multiple times at 7 o'clock, but doesn't really do it very much or hasn't done it very much if we start at 7:30. So hopefully that it'll stay that way. And just again, one last thing, our sponsor Omni True Value Hardware in West Babylon, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue, 631-756-1125. Their website is omnitruevalue.com, and it's Long Island's biggest rock salt provider, and it's got everything you need if it's about winter weather and getting rid of snow and ice. Omni True Value Hardware in West Babylon. So, Joe, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great Sunday. I got a pot roast. I put on in the crock pot at 6 o'clock this morning. So I'm going to go up and check it right now.
Very good. And we'll see you tomorrow.